All right, everybody. Well, welcome. It is 2 o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and get started to be respectful of everybody's time. Thank you so much for being here today. I hope the conference has been going really well for everybody. My name is Rebecca Jacobson. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I am an academic and financial aid advisor at Dakota County Technical College in Minnesota, and I am also the PSEO coordinator there, which means I oversee one of our dual enrollment programs. And today I'm going to be leading you through some of the things that we've been doing to integrate students into our technical education programs. I'll try and watch the chat the best I can while we're going through, or the Q&A. I also have it set up to ding if anybody raises their hand. Please feel free to stop me and ask questions as we keep going. I'm super excited to share with you all about the program and what we've been doing at our college. And on the first slide here, I like to just start and end with students. That's who we're here to learn for. That's who we're here to serve. And I like to start off with some of our PSEO students who have been in our trades programs. This is arguably one of my favorite students, and we'll all say we don't have favorites. But this is Lucy. She was in our PSEO program last year and earned a full year of college at no cost in our auto body program. And she will be graduating this spring with her Associates of Applied Science in Auto Body. So she did 1 year for free and then 1 year with us as a traditional student through our PSEO program. So this is kind of some examples, and I'll show a few throughout the presentation of some of the different ways that we utilize PSEO to integrate students into our career and technical education programs. So our session plan for today is going to be to overview our college and our post-secondary enrollment options. I know we're joining from all around the country, so I just want to do some definitions and overviews. I'll share some of the changes in process and procedures to increase integration into our programs and talk about some of the results that we've had, because we've had some really positive results. I'll talk about where we're going next in PSEO and some ideas of some things that we might change or do differently moving forward. And then finally, if we have some time, end with some conversation and questions, because I don't want to just talk at you for 50 minutes. We've been listening to a lot of talking the last couple of days. Before diving in and talking about anything that we're doing at our institution, I do just want to talk about some important definitions and acronyms that we have. So for those of you who may not be as familiar, in Minnesota, we do a dual enrollment program called PSEO, which is post-secondary enrollment options, where students are taking courses at a college in the state of Minnesota. And this is at private and public colleges, both within our system and outside of the system. And today I'm specifically going to be talking about traditional PSEO, which is where students are taking classes at the college with our students. That could be online, that could be in person, but they're ingrained in our college like a traditional student, except their courses are being paid for by the Department of Education. If I refer to MDE, that's the Minnesota Department of Education. They oversee the PSEO policy and procedure. So that's going to be kind of the governing body that we're looking at when thinking about how this is structured. And then I also want to talk about the fact that we are part of a system. I'm part of the MnState system, or MnSCU, which is Minnesota State Colleges and Universities. So this is 26 colleges, so community and technical colleges, as well as 7 universities that are part of the same system, with many standardized policies and procedures, and of course the autonomy to do what we would like to do as well. There's lots of things that are similar, but some things that are not similar. And today I'll be talking a lot about CTE, or career and technical education. And what that means in the scope of our college is going to be trades and health, construction, manufacturing, and transportation. We are a technical college, so we are prioritizing that 2-year education, or even shorter, sometimes certificates and diplomas. So about Dakota County Technical College, we are what I like to call a semi-rural college. So if you look at our little marker on the map here, we are close to the Twin Cities Metro. So if you go 25 minutes north of our college, we have downtown Minneapolis and St. Paul, the Twin Cities, a very metropolitan area. But we're on the south side of the suburbs, so 25 minutes south of us are rural communities and farms. We have about 2,000 students at our college total. That's not just PSEO students, that's all of our students. Our enrollment has been up the last few years, and we offer 50 plus programs in a few different career clusters. So of course we have construction and manufacturing trades, transportation, thinking about mechanics, health and education careers, so nursing, veterinary technician, but like also early childhood education. We have a really great variety of business administration and marketing programs, as well as visual arts and design and STEM. And I want you to think of STEM in regards to like IT and biomedical equipment. We don't have like math programs or engineering programs that would transfer to a four-year college. Our priority is really just those 2 years and done programs is what we specialize in. So how PSEO works in the state of Minnesota is that students have their courses paid for by the Department of Education. We're paid a prorated rate per credit for each course that students take throughout the semester and are paid directly by the Department of Education. There is no cost to students. They get to borrow their books and materials at no cost. If they get something they get to keep, like a laptop or tools, they are responsible for paying for those items. But in general, there's no cost to students. And then each college gets to determine what our admissions criteria are, what courses students can take, and what modality they're allowed to take courses in. The policies and procedures that govern PSEO are written into our state statute and determined by our legislature. For 11th and 12th graders, it's pretty flexible. For 10th graders, it's not. But that was recently added to legislation that 10th graders could do PSEO. So there has been some really great strides there. And in general, we are getting paid more per credit than we are from traditional students by the state, which is really great to absorb things like textbook costs that we may see for these students. When thinking of who we're serving in PSEO, I have some demographics written here for both our institution as well as the Minnesota state system as a whole. So last year we had 136 unique PSEO students. This has doubled from when I took over the program about 2 years ago. I've been working with PSEO for 2 years at this point. In general, in our dual enrollment programs, female students are highly overrepresented. Because we're a technical college, it's almost opposite for us, in which we have a higher volume of male students looking to enter technical careers. We serve about 30% students of color, 28% at DCTC. These are numbers we've been trying to increase. We are close to a metropolitan area, and I will say there are some student populations that are very underrepresented. Indigenous students, Somali students are very underrepresented, and we've been trying to take some steps to alleviate that. In regards to grade of our dual enrollment programs, across the state, it's about 59% seniors and 37% juniors and 5% sophomores. A little bit higher on seniors at DCTC, and then juniors and sophomores a little bit lower. And then thinking about first generation students, I don't have statewide data for this, but I do have data for us. Last year, we had 41.1% first generation students in our PSEO population. So now that you understand who we're working with and kind of what our goals are, I kind of want to talk about what my praxis has been, or what the crux of all my work has been working with PSEO. So since we work with these very high demand trade careers, I think that we can really begin closing some generational equity gaps and wealth gaps very quickly, and earlier than other opportunities by integrating students into high demand trade programs. There's been a lot of work to intentionally recruit students of underrepresented identities in the trades, working with trades that could be women, LGBTQ students, students with disabilities, students of color, and first generation students, and then get them into high demand, high paying careers. Some examples of this would be getting students into our automotive mechanics program, our diesel mechanics program, our electrician, HVAC programs. These are careers that are extremely high demand. We always need HVAC technicians. We always need electricians. And they're also very high paying careers with just a 2-year degree. And my main question that I ask myself and ask a lot of my colleagues, why make students wait until after high school if they know where they want to go? If they're in 10th or 11th grade and they know they want to be a diesel mechanic, why make them wait until after high school to get started on that? So another example here, I have Connor. He's in our heavy construction equipment program. He's a first-year student. He got all of his general education courses taken care of while he was a PSEO student. We usually have about 15 credits of generals in each of our associate degree programs, and he got those all out of the way, which is a cost savings for his family of about $3,500. So not only is it a cost saving, that's more time that he can now spend working. He works at a diesel equipment company. He's very involved in campus life as well as the statewide 4-H group. And we freed up some time for him to do that by getting his general education courses out of the way in advance. So in order to integrate these students into our programs, I think there's kind of 3 main pieces that we have to look at. The first one is going to be recruitment, and then retention, and then of course success, right? So for recruitment, we're looking at documentation that's clear to students, accessible procedures, and realistic expectations. In regards to retention, we have a lot of goal-driven advising, and we really encourage students to utilize our support services, and then redefining what we think of as success. Of course, we would love students to matriculate to our college where they stay here after they graduate high school, but some other really successful stories are students who graduate while they're still in high school or transfer to a 4-year college or another college to complete a credential. Whatever the goal is for the student, that's what we want to meet. We want to meet their success, and it's different for every student. It's very individualized, and we try and respect that individuality in our recruitment and our advising. So I would like to talk specifically about our recruitment strategies. The first thing that we've done is we've provided a clear document with what programs are available that our students can participate in. As a technical college, we have lots of programs that require students to be full-time or be on campus, and we try and be upfront with students about that. And we also have lots of programs that are part-time that students can complete online, or they can just take 1 or 2 classes at a time. We've tried to update our admissions criteria and processes to reflect our population. Some examples of that are making admissions criteria the same for 11th and 12th grade students. In many colleges that I work with in the area, they have different admissions criteria for 11th and 12th grade students, but the data I have for our population doesn't support that 11th grade students do worse than 12th grade students. In fact, they outperform seniors. So we've tried to make the admissions criteria to the same for both of those groups of students. We also try and make the admissions criteria as low as possible because we're working with technical education students who often haven't done well in a high school environment, especially post-COVID with online learning. It greatly impacted students who are interested in the trades. They're not very good at general education courses, or they don't enjoy them very much, but I don't want to penalize them for that. If they're going to be a successful diesel mechanic, I want them to get into some diesel mechanic courses. I do want to take a pause here, and I would like to share some of our processes. Ooh, that's a great question I see in the chat from Mary. Are the admissions criteria variable from institution to institution, not standardized across the state? Yes, our admissions criteria do vary from institution to institution. It can make it very confusing for students. There is a work group actually within the Minnesota state system right now that's trying to work on some standardized admissions criteria, though that does give me a little bit of pause if my students were held to the same standards as somebody who was trying to go to a 4-year university or college that might have more rigorous coursework than we have at our institution. Great question. And with that said, I do just want to show everybody our admissions criteria or kind of what that looks like at our college. So I am going to go ahead and stop sharing. And I'm just going to pull up our website. This is something that myself and my colleagues have done a lot of work on. I think one of our admissions reps, Carrie Lurkin, is here. He's amazing. We work together a lot. And myself and the admissions team have worked very hard on updating our website to make it clear, concise, and easy for students to navigate. So what we have here, hopefully everybody can see that, is our PSEO admissions page. We do have a separate page for students on our website. And the first thing, of course, we have is our deadline. We do have a hard and fast deadline for acceptance into our program. And then we have information about how you can get in contact with us in our information sessions. I'll talk a little bit more about what our information sessions look like in a moment, but we do have those very regularly and posted on our website. We do have a checklist of what you need to do to get done and into our PSEO program. This is a nice PDF document that has a list of everything that you may need. And what's really the crux of what we do here is our programming. We are a career and technical college. Our mission is education for employment, and we want our students doing courses with intentionality. This is a document that was started by my predecessor and that I've changed quite a bit to reflect what our programs are, what the modalities are, the times of day. And then you can see our high demand programs here on the right. High demand programs for us are programs that often have a wait list. We have a couple of hundred students at any given time trying to get into our electrician program, our HVAC program. So sometimes we can't get PSEO students in there, but we can help them prepare for that programming after. We do have this split up by career cluster of what programs students can do, where those courses are held, which is super important. Some students don't thrive in an online environment, while some of them do very well. And we also have what programs students cannot do. We want to be upfront about that, that they cannot do our beer and brewing stewardship program, unfortunately, as high school students. We won't be allowing them to brew beer. We also can't have them in things like our veterinary technician program or our dental assistant program, as they aren't allowed to take x-rays as minors, and there's lots of extra immunizations they have to get. This document is a lot to look at, but it is a really nice overview of everything that we have, and we can do some individualized advising on what programs we have and what would be available to students once we get them to us in the door. And further on our website, we have our paperwork, our application. There is a document that all students are required to do for PSEO across the state, which is called the Notice of Registration. And we also have a little contract that just kind of outlines the students' expectations. And here you can see our eligibility requirements. We've tried to make them as simple as possible. The 10th grade requirement is set by the state legislature, and we're not allowed to change that. But for 11th and 12th grade students, we've just aligned our criteria with our admissions requirements for any other student coming to our college. These criteria make it so students place into any coursework they would like to take without having to do any additional testing or remedial education courses, which are not paid for by the state of Minnesota. And then we also have our steps for our high demand programs. These are optional for students who are interested in specific career-based programs that may have some additional steps. So in general, we're trying to get the information in front of students as soon as we can and as quickly as we can to ensure that there's no confusion about what we're trying to do. All right. So let me get back to my presentation here. That is not the format I would like it to be in. There we go. Present from current slide. There we go. So that's kind of what I'm talking about when I say updating our admissions criteria and processes. Hopefully everybody can see the presentation again. I like to think I'm tech savvy, but I'm proved wrong quite regularly. And the other thing I like to talk about is kind of demystifying what PSEO is. A lot of people think that PSEO is a reward for high achieving students, and that's how dual enrollment is often perceived around the state of Minnesota. I'm trying to throw that idea out the window. I don't believe for a moment that PSEO should be held specifically for students who are high achieving at their high school. We're a career and technical college. We're not looking for the high achievers, right? Of course, they make their way to us, but we're looking for people who like to work with their hands, for people who may not be super successful in a traditional high school environment. We also like to be realistic with students and give them realistic expectations. If a student is interested in being a doctor or a lawyer, we don't have the pathways created or the course options available to help them get those prerequisite courses out of the way. So I'm not here to lie to students and tell them that they should come to our college if it's not a good fit for them. I have no problem referring students to a community college up the road if they need some courses that we don't offer. I have been trying to sorry, I have a question here. Our PSEO course is dual credit. Yes, these are a form of dual credit. They do transition back to high schools. Sorry. There we go. So yes, our courses do transfer back to high schools, and we do have some really great communication with high schools about how our credits transfer back to their institutions. Great question. Some other things that we've been doing are trying to prioritize diversifying PSEO and sharing information with students of marginalized communities. Over the past couple of years, I've prioritized going to local high schools and trying to speak to organizations like their Black student unions and other cultural groups. I also like to recruit students from alternative learning schools, which in the state of Minnesota are alternative programs for students who may not be doing well in a high school environment. A lot of these students are first generation and students of color. So I've really been prioritizing getting information to those students directly and also to their families. And lastly, we've been trying to increase the information session access and frequency that we have. Used to be monthly that we did information sessions, but now myself and Carrie will get together and meet with students twice a month, both virtually and in person, to share through our whole admissions process and our advising process so students know what they're getting into. So once we get the students in the door, we do have a really high increase in enrollment, but we don't just want students in the door, we want them to stay here and be successful. We want them to complete coursework with satisfactory grades. Of course, sometimes students don't complete courses with satisfactory grades, but that's also a learning experience for our students. I have the privilege of being able to advise students all one-on-one in our programs because we have such a low number of PSEO students. And that leads to the ability of goal-oriented advising. Whenever students are coming to sign up for classes, I always make students take classes with intentionality. I don't let students take classes just to get out of high school or just because they don't like their classmates. We need to be taking courses with some sort of goal in mind. That goal may be starting one of our technical education programs. It could be transferring to a four-year college, or it could be trying to graduate early from high school. But at the end of the day, students need to have a goal in mind when they're taking courses. We highly encourage students to utilize our support services on campus as well. PSEO students are very encouraged to utilize our tutoring, our Center for Student Success, and our technology. I send them to accessibility services very often. And for a small college, we do have a ton of support services like a food pantry, disability resources, a plethora of tutors and advisors. So at the end of the day, we really want students to take advantage of the college experience and all of the resources that they have. Something that's been a struggle, but I think is necessary to retention of students is collaborating with high schools. The way the PSEO model works in Minnesota is actually detrimental to high schools in that they lose money when students participate in this dual enrollment program. So a lot of times there's some hesitancy from high schools and counselors to put students into our programs, but nonetheless, we still have to prioritize the best interest of those students and collaborate with their high schools. I communicate very regularly with high school counselors. I send grades and transcripts to them. I reach out to them if students are doing poorly or if students drop out from classes, just to check in and see how things are going. As a PSEO advisor, I am not allowed to share with students' parents. They are protected by FERPA. But I am legally obligated to communicate with their high school administrators, and I do like to utilize that. At this time, our college does not have any articulation or MOU agreements with high schools like PSEO by contract. That is something that exists in the state of Minnesota. We also have concurrent enrollment, which is a different program that we have at our college. I don't oversee those programs, but they do exist, and it's something that we really do want to build out. We do have early college agreements, though, with our college. We have 3 of them right now that we're working on renewing. So we do have early college agreements with high schools in our area. Great question. In relation to early colleges, something that's important to us is very clearly articulated pathways for our students. We like our students to know what it's going to look like while they're in PSEO, as well as what's going to happen after high school. I very frequently will meet with students to put together like a 2-year plan of what they can do while they're in PSEO, or even a 1-year plan if that's needed. So we do have very clearly articulated pathways of how to get into our programs and what they have to do afterwards. The last thing that I've done as a PSEO coordinator is really refined our communication. I like to send regular emails to my students about support services, and we do have a designated contact on campus who is myself. We have a special inbox just for PSEO students to help them stay together, to make sure I can stay organized as an advisor. And I also have a backup trained who can check that email if I'm out of office. So if I'm gone, students aren't waiting weeks or days for information when they need some assistance. So what are some results we have? What are some of the successes we've had since doing some of these changes to our programming and our model? I have a lot of data from last year. I haven't put it all together for this year yet, but I can give you kind of a snapshot of what's been happening. I took over PSEO in spring of 2022 after the semester had started. At that time, we had 76 PSEO students, and that's when I started to really make my big changes. As you can see, we've had a very significant increase in enrollment and number of credits that students are taking over the last few semesters. Right now for spring semester, we have 137 PSEO students, so we've almost doubled our PSEO enrollment. And for this spring semester, we're on track to have almost 1,300 credits of PSEO within our campus. And this is equivalent to about 4% of our enrollment on campus. Almost 5% is what our PSEO students are. Of all of those students that we have a lot of them who are integrated into our programs. Last spring, we had 25.7% of our students who were in full-time technical education programs, which means that they were following our program pathways and taking 12 credits or more in a specific topic area that we offer programming in. Last spring, we had 6 students who graduated from our college while still in high school with an associate's degree, diploma, or certificate. And 75% of the students who didn't graduate yet and were still in high school returned to us this fall. 47.9% of the students who were seniors in our PSEO program also matriculated in fall of 2023, meaning they stayed behind to take classes with us here at DCTC. I don't have full numbers for this year yet, but I can share that this semester we still have about 25% of our students who are in full-time technical programs, and we're on track to have 8 students graduate with an associate's degree or diploma this spring. The funny part is our school year ends in mid-May and high schools here end in June. So these are 8 students who will be graduating high school or college before they graduate high school. I have 3 welders, so I have 3 students who have done our welding program full-time. We're going to have a diploma in welding technology when they leave. I have a student in graphic design, in early childhood, and a couple of IT students as well. So we have students all across the board in our technical programs. And with what we've been doing, we also have 15 students who are juniors this year. We're on track to stay and graduate with an associate's degree or diploma next year. So our numbers are increasing, not in only students, but students who are having successful outcomes and earning college credentials before they finished high school, most importantly at no cost. This doesn't, of course, include the number of students who may be seniors who are going to stay and graduate next year, who have gotten a semester or a year of college at no cost. That to me is really the crux of this. It really is free college with high demand trades and high demand careers that are getting students high paying jobs. And I think when you couple those trades with students of marginalized identities, that's how we can really begin closing generational equity gaps. I really do think trade school can be utilized as kind of the future of closing generational equity gaps, because we know that there's need for these jobs and there's pay in these jobs. It's very secure. It's very secure. So where do we go next, right? There's still a lot that we need to do. These are things that are still in their infancy, but we're not quite done yet. In fact, we're not even close to done yet. We still have a lot of work to do. So something that I'm prioritizing is the recruitment and retention of marginalized students. Statistically, our students of color do have lower GPAs than non-students of color. Those are performance gaps that we need to close. In fact, I would like to see my students of color do better than non-students of color. The other thing that we really need to do is increase our access to documents, processes, and procedures. So refine and simplify them further, but make them available in more languages. We've been trying to find ways to really include and welcome parents into the PSEO conversation, especially for students of marginalized identities and students who come from collectivist cultures. Their family and their parents are extremely important in their educational journey, and we want them to be welcome as part of that journey. I know as a practitioner in higher education that a lot of times when you get a phone call or an email from a parent, you drop a little bit, right? Your stomach drops and you're like, oh man, I have to talk to this kid's mom, right? I'm really trying to throw that idea out the window and understand that we should be appreciative of parents who care and want to engage in their students' education, because quite frankly, not everybody has that. We've also been working on expanding our early middle college programming. We currently have agreements with 3 different early middle or alternative learning schools in our area. We do have quite a bit of a transportation desert in our area. There's no public transportation, which can make this a real challenge. But I would like to involve more students from alternative learning schools in our programming. And then we want to find ways to involve these students in our campus community, mentorship, clubs, campus events. We want students to get that full college experience. And we know that students who participate in student life program are more successful in their coursework. We want to integrate those students, not just into the classes, but into our campus community. And we want to help those students find community and people who think like them and learn like them, which is something they may not be getting at high school. I have 2 more students here. We have Reese, who has an associate's degree in early childhood and youth development. They got a year done as a PSEO student and then did a year as a traditional student. They graduated last spring with their associate's degree. I believe they transferred to a 4-year college, but a year of college at no cost. And I remember talking to Reese and her dad. Her dad works in the oil refinery, and he was really worried about how he was going to pay for her education, and she got half of it done at no cost. Next, I also have Oscar. Oscar is one of my favorite students I've ever worked with. This is a great picture of Oscar because little do you all know, when we first met him, he never talked. He was very shy. He did not have any friends on campus. He did one of our summer credit recovery programs and decided to stay as a PSEO student. He got 1 semester done. He also works on campus as a student ambassador, and he's still currently working on completing his degree. He's in multiple clubs. He's going to be a lead student ambassador next year, so he's going to be one of our leaders on campus. He has tons of friends, and he's really blossomed into an amazing young man. And I've worked a lot with Oscar's mom as well, and she's so glad that he's here. She's so glad that he's getting a college education, which is something that her and her husband were not able to get for themselves, you know? So Oscar's a first-generation student. His parents immigrated from Mexico, and he had no idea what he wanted to do. He didn't even know that he wanted to go to college, and very proud to see that he's thriving, really genuinely thriving at our institution. So I put together a pretty short presentation. I know a lot of us have just kind of been sitting and talking or sitting and listening for the last couple of days. And I really wanted to give some room for conversation and questions about what opportunities or ideas you may have about integrating dual enrollment students into your programs, or what you may already be doing, so I can steal it. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I just wanted to open it up. I know we still have quite a bit of time left, but I did really want to prioritize some of this community conversation amongst ourselves and other people who are doing similar things. So feel free to unmute yourself or raise your hand, but I just kind of want to hear what you folks are thinking. Yeah, I see Julius. Go ahead.
How are you doing today?
Great. How are you?
I am fine. I'm fine. I bring you greetings from the home of the world champion Kansas City Chiefs. So, not to offend any other sports fans, but I think the challenge for us, I would say, is the vetting process for kids who are interested in CTE at our tech school. One thing that we had to eliminate was a questionnaire. They had a questionnaire that they had to fill out, and we found that to be very inequitable for a lot of students. One, some of the wording on it was like totally over their head. They didn't understand it, so they would answer it wrong. That's one challenge that we have. The other challenge that we're trying to conquer is just finding teachers. Finding the students is not the hard thing. because I agree with you. I think we have a lot of students who really know what they want to do with CTE. Like they understand, like, hey, I could come into this, this CTE program, finish with my certification or my associate's degree, and I could come out making $60,000. For instance, here in Kansas, they just built a Panasonic battery plant, and they're looking for bench technicians. I mean, like, so it's just for us, our challenge is, or I would like to know if somebody could have a suggestion, how do you go about recruiting the instructors to build the capacity of your program?
Yeah, those are good points. I want to touch on like the idea of vetting a little bit. Um, we have an appeals process for students who may not meet our academic criteria and acknowledging that not everybody will meet the academic criteria. And I have like a rubric that I go through. And some things that I make students answer, some things that I ask them about are, do you show up on time, right? We're working with trades. If you show up late working in a trades job, you get fired. That's unfortunately just reality. But those are hard conversations. So I have like some personal things that I ask students. I call it like a college readiness rubric almost. Does the student speak for themselves or do their parents speak on their behalf? Does a student show up on time to our meeting? You know, that those are kind of some questions that I like to ask students. But I usually don't do that unless I have to, you know?
Could I reach out to you via email and
Yeah.
possibly get a copy of that to look at that? And you know what I mean? Because I just, because right now we don't have any requirements for our tech pro. Well, for a couple like machine technology, cosmetology, nail tech, and drafting requires like an Accuplacer score. Everything else, you could come in with a, you know, 1.5, 0.5, and you will be accepted. And I have no problem with that. But a lot of times what we've been finding out with the data is that those children with those adverse GPAs don't persist. And that's the whole point of the pro. We want you to get in and persist. Another issue that we had is that we had a number of students this year that was like, hey, I really don't want to be here. I just came because my counselor told me to. And I'm like, no, we can't do that because now we've put you in a space that could have been designated for somebody who really had the desire to do it that didn't get selected. You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah. And I mean, unfortunately, a lot of our programs have long wait lists. So students will have to wait a semester, a year, or even a year and a half to get in. And it's almost like its own self-vetting. Like if you're willing to wait a year and a half to do a program, you know, and then the other question you had was about recruiting faculty. Luckily, these students are taking classes on our campus with our college, but recruiting technical faculty is extremely challenging. At least in Minnesota, faculty take a pay cut of tens of thousands of dollars to teach in our education system. Our faculty contracts are set up for those who have master's degrees and PhDs, which people don't have in trades. So we have trades faculty who will make $70,000 a year compared to an English faculty who makes $120,000 a year. Whereas that tradesman could have been making $100,000 a year in their industry. And we don't have the answer to that either, unfortunately. Recruiting technical faculty is a huge challenge because we just don't pay very well. Colleges
yeah.
don't pay very well, you know. But the ones who are there are great. You know, if you can find people who are there, you know that they're there for the success of students. So I don't have an answer to that question, but I think that's something that all technical education programs experience, at least across the state of Minnesota. I can't speak for other states as well.
Okay. Thank you so much.
I am Mary.
Hello, hello. Julius, I know I don't know you, but we can't be friends because I'm a Bills fan, so sorry. I just want to say that I've worked with dual enrollment in North Carolina since 2008, and we have had a shift over that time in terms of our admissions criteria and what we're looking for with students. And I really like this setup. We do have a standardized admission criteria across the state. So all 58 of our community colleges do have the same criteria, the same structure for our different pathways. But I'm so excited that you're talking about CTE because I think that it's sort of an unrecognized gem. Like I think so many more students could benefit from CTE. We have a huge number of students that are focused on those transfer courses. I was just like giddy that you're working strictly with CTE students. I thought that was really great. Do you do anything with apprenticeships in your area with your CTE kids?
It's a great question. A lot of our programs have ingrained internships in our program. One of my favorite examples is we have a General Motors program. So Chevy, GMC, Buick, Cadillac. And a lot of our trade programs have internships ingrained. And in this program, students will spend 8 weeks on our campus and then 8 weeks at a paid internship. And I'll get students into programs like that, you know, where they're here for 16 weeks and at their internship for 16 weeks, paid, of course. And now we have PSEO students, right, dual enrollment students who have done a year of this. And one of my favorites is a young gentleman named Pilot. He came to us with a 1.8 GPA last year, and his GPA at the end of his first semester was a 3.6. So a lot of our programs do innately have internships or work-based learning ingrained into the curriculum. But apprenticeships in some of the trades are very hard, and thinking of like the electrician apprenticeship, or even trying to get into a union is a 2-year wait list sometimes. So I do wish we had opportunities to engage students who are waiting to get into a program to start getting some of the apprenticeship hours they need. And we don't have anything established like that right now. That's a great one. I see that Lauren posted in the chat some really great things that they're doing about engaging students with faculty, and tying students into career services, which I think is really imperative. And then they can be crosswalked over to degree-seeking students. I like that a lot, Lauren. That's a really great example of that crosswalking them over, getting them matriculated over, because we want to keep them. Obviously, we either want to graduate them or we want to keep the students. It's mutually beneficial. Those are some really great points. Any other like questions or ideas or things that you folks are doing at your institution to kind of engage students in this kind of programming?
So Rebecca, one other thing that I was going to share, our admissions criteria in North Carolina right now is that the students, in order to qualify on their own, they have to have a 2.8 unweighted cumulative high school GPA, which is, you know, fairly high. That's about a B average. If they are looking at a transfer course like an English or a math, that's a pretty hard and fast GPA unless they have really high test scores. But what I love that we are doing is that for the CTE students, they can get a recommendation from their high school. And so I think that kind of ties in what you were talking about, your college readiness rubric. You know, can they show up on time? Are they interested in the material? I love that we have that opportunity for our high school folks to weigh in, because a lot of times they are the ones that really know the student. And I'm exactly with you that you can have a kid that has a terrible low high school GPA, but is going to come in and learn how to completely take my car apart and put it back together better than new, because we finally connected them to a passion. So that's just something to think about for folks that are looking for ways to sort of screen students, is that we will take that recommendation from the high school.
Yeah, and I like that you just mentioned like the innate skills that these students have and the passion that they have for these industries. So besides working with PSEO students, I actually advise all of our transportation students and our electricians. And something that I think is so important to debunk is my students come in and think that they're stupid. And I've had students say that to me to my face before, that they think they're dumb. They talk poorly of themselves because they type slowly or they're bad spellers, right? Because that's what our educational system says to them. That's what our educational system says to them, you know, is that they're not good enough or they're lesser than because their GPA is not very good. They're not good at reading and writing and spelling or math. But they can weld like nobody's business. And those students, to me, those are my people, right? Those are the kids that I want in my programs. I'll take the 4.0 GPA student all day. I'm not going to go and seek them out. You know, I want the kids who aren't in the place that they deserve to be. in their high school. Lauren, you've shared some great ideas. I'm interested to hear your opinion.
So I'm actually a graduate from a technical school, and I interviewed students one-on-one for about 15 years, specifically in the high school market. And some of them may have been diagnosed ADHD. Some of them should have been diagnosed as ADHD. I will tell you, I like debunking it by asking qualifying questions, such as, what kind of a learner do you think you are? Right? And that is very foretelling. Are you visual? Are you hands-on? Are you an interest-based learner? That right there says to me, as we dig deeper into those conversations and those qualifying questions, well, then let's talk about, you don't like to read. Well, what do you like to read about? That is a clarifying question, because let's put you in a program that you're really not just thinking about interests. Like, I'd like a car, they're cool, but do you tinker with cars? Do you like to, are you mechanically inclined? Just asking very intentional questions can be very foretelling for a CTE learner. And I loved to call us, and I'm proud to be one, as an interest-based learner. They're motivated when they're interested, and they're not motivated when they're not interested. That's why they like to read sometimes, and they don't like to read sometimes. And I think that those qualifying questions are very important. And then we're setting them up in pathways that the majority of the things that they're doing are engaging them in the areas that they're interested in. And that's setting them up to feel more confident that they could potentially be a college degree seeking student, that the confidence that they didn't have because the shoe didn't fit in general education, which is too general for interest-based learners. And I love working at Wake Tech because it's a combination of both traditional college and technical college, and bringing those worlds together so that it can be all things to all people. So these are very important conversations around career and technical education, which can be leveraged to interest-based learners, and then crosswalking them over into degree-seeking students, which I think is so untapped. And as one of the ladies had said, a gem. I think it's an area that really could help equity with neurodiversified students.
Absolutely. And something that we experience is about 30% of students on our campus work formally with disability services. But I want to build on that more and add that our college is set up for the success of people who are have ADHD or are neurodivergent. And a large portion of our faculty who have come from trades are also neurodivergent, whether they know that or not. So it's really cool to see students get to work with people who are like them, who have worked in their industry, who have worked in their trades, oftentimes for 10, 15, or 20 years, if not more. We have some really wonderful technical educators, and I hope we keep all of them for a very long time, because as Julius mentioned, finding them is extremely hard. I did just want to mention what I feel like are a couple of barriers that we face that others might be facing as well. Is that a lot of high schools here are cutting out any type of technical programs that they have. So students are coming in with no mechanical skills, right? Students are coming in, they don't know how to use a scroll saw. They don't know how to use a wrench or how to read a tape measure. And our faculty are often frustrated at what they feel is remedial information for their industry. If you think there's a remedial English course, for remedial for mechanics is how to read a tape measure and use a wrench, right? That there's a lot of faculty frustration that they have to go through what they perceive as remedial education for trade students. But how many high schools do we know of, especially during COVID, that cut their mechanics programs or their shop classes, their carpentry classes, their cooking classes? So that's something that we've been experiencing a lot, is students just coming in with less knowledge. But I think that those, especially students coming from inner city schools that are underfunded, especially from communities of color, students who get funneled into really, really underfunded schools in Minneapolis and St. Paul. But what those students may not have in mechanical skills, they have in perseverance and desire to learn, right? Trying not to think of a deficit mindset. We have just a couple more minutes. Does anybody have any final questions or notes they'd like to add to the conversation? Yes. Oh, what accommodations or actions are or were taken to make your campus more inclusive to neurodivergent students? specifically ADHD, interested how the efforts affect the faculty and staff. In our college, it's very popular for our programs to spend about an hour in lecture and 4 to 5 hours a day in lab spaces. We have full auto mechanic shops, diesel mechanic shops, electrical construction spaces. We have a 28-acre climbing field for our electrical line workers. We have a veterinary technician program with 2 surgical rooms. So our college is ingrained as pretty much exactly what you'd see in a trade-based environment. So that's how I think we can kind of get those students interested and get them in the door. Some things that we've been embarking a lot on are universal design for our students, the idea of recording things, of having access to information in multiple platforms, the ability to have online textbooks or physical textbooks. And our faculty learn that way too. I don't know if it's an action. I think it's just by happenstance. That's how our faculty learn too, because they also are from that population of students, which I think is invaluable to them. That's a really great question. There's still a lot of work to do, especially thinking about things like testing. We really struggle with testing here. We really struggle with students who come from other countries who are collectivists, who are used to working together as a community or as a group. We have a large portion of African students in our nursing program, and they want to work together because that's collectivist culture. That's where they come from, and trying to debunk that idea that that's academically dishonest. So those are some things that we've done and some things that we still need to work on. But that's a really wonderful question too. Thank you for that one. I think, are we supposed to end at 2:50 or 2:55? I can't quite remember. But I did pop my email in the chat. Let me put it in there one more time. Sorry, I got a lot of stuff open here. I do really appreciate you all coming today and engaging in this conversation. I'm so excited that you were all here today. Thank you so much, Erin. I'm just going to pop my email in the chat here again. If anybody would like to reach out to me, I'm more than glad to discuss with other folks kind of what we've been doing, share any documents we have with you. I'm a big information sharer. Like, please take my information and use it to your own purposes. Why reinvent the wheel when you can steal it? It would not be stealing, it would be freely given. And I really mean that. I appreciate you all coming today. Thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the conference. And I will stick behind for a moment or two if anybody wants to talk to me individually. But thank you all for coming today.